Imagine you are a Polynesian navigator. Beneath your feet, an ancient double-hulled voyaging canoe carries your crew, water, food, stone tools, and living plants for a distant island. Tonight, in this boring history for sleep, you can let the details drift while every person aboard trusts you to hold the route. Home is disappearing behind you. Ahead lies weeks of open Pacific and a destination too low to see until you are almost upon it. A small mistake held through one dark night can put the island behind you before anyone sees it. Which rising star do you choose when the sky will not stay still? What holds your course when cloud erases the heavens? And when the horizon stays empty and supplies are finite, how will you find land before wind and current carry the canoe beyond it? I'm Elias. Subscribe for another strange, softly told journey to fall asleep to tomorrow night. This steerer is already waiting for your first instruction. You are not a passenger tonight. You are the Polynesian navigator responsible for the route. For now, your departure island is still there. It is only a thin shape above the stern, blue-black against the last color of evening. Your feet feel the woven deck move beneath them. One hull rises, the other follows, and the cross beams give a low wooden complaint as the lashings take the strain. The sail holds the wind with a steady pull. Your teachers gave you no dial to glance at and no little glowing screen to announce that the canoe has wandered to one side. They taught you to build a route from the world you can see, hear, feel, and remember. You turn and look backward because your first navigational marks belong to home. There are two marks on the departing shore. One is low, perhaps a point of rock, a gap in trees, with a bright line where a beach catches the remaining sky. The other stands higher behind it, a shoulder of hill or a peak. While the two marks remain lined up, the canoe is holding the chosen path away from land. If the lower mark slides sideways against the upper one, the canoe is turned. You do not need a brass instrument to understand the correction. You need two things that refuse to move and the patience to keep one directly beneath the other. This is backsighting, and it gives you the first quiet reward of the voyage. Before the open ocean becomes a puzzle of stars and swells, the first course is borrowed from home. It is a little like leaving a strange parking lot and checking in the mirror that the entrance lines up behind you. Except this entrance is an island, the parking lot is rather larger, and forgetting the turn will not be corrected by circling the block. The lower mark goes first. It sinks into haze and distance until the sea covers it. The higher ridge remains for a while, no longer a precise pair, but still a reference. Then that ridge also becomes uncertain. A cloud can imitate it. A dark swell can briefly raise it. You blink, look again, and find only one unbroken horizon. This is the moment that gives the story its grip. A small steering error is not impressive. The canoe does not lurch toward doom. The deck still lifts, the sail still breathes, and your crew may feel that very little has changed. Yet a small error held patiently for hours becomes a wide separation. By dawn, the canoe can be many miles beside the place where you expected it to be. Near the end of the voyage, that difference can put a low island on the correct horizon or leave it behind your shoulder, unseen. You therefore begin with a reference course. Departure is not merely the act of leaving. It is the first entry in a route you must keep alive after every fixed thing has disappeared. You remember the starting place and intended direction. Later, you will add estimates of time, speed, drift, and every change in heading, as if drawing the voyage on an invisible page no one else can see. Behind you, home has become a fact held in memory. Ahead, the first bright star is lowering toward the place where the ocean meets the sky. It seems almost too delicate to inherit the work of an island. Yet you watch the exact part of the horizon from which it has come, name the bearing, and hear the steerer settle a paddle against the water. The last shore is gone. The next mark is made of light. The canoe is not empty except for brave people and good intentions. Beneath mats and covers, along the platform and inside protected containers, it carries the practical weight of another shore. There is water, carefully stored. There are foods chosen because they can survive spray, heat, and time. There are tools whose value will become obvious the moment land is reached, and a shelter, garden, fishing place, or repair is needed. On settlement voyages, people carried more than meals for the crossing. They carried the beginnings of meals that would be grown later, living plants, cuttings, seeds, and the knowledge of when and where to place them. Animals moved with people through the Pacific as well. Stone, pottery, cordage, timber work, and the forms of canoes themselves leave material traces of communities connected across distances that look enormous even on a modern map. The cargo changes the emotional shape of the story. A drifting canoe can carry survivors. A planned voyaging canoe can carry a future. Across East Polynesia, the last great region of habitable Earth settled by people, island groups were reached in phases. Archaeology places people on remote islands separated by long passages of open sea. Geochemical work has matched stone artifacts to geological sources hundreds or even thousands of kilometers away. At an early Tongan site, pottery with material linked to places far to the west records movement across island regions. On the coast of New Zealand, part of an early sailing canoe survived long enough to place sophisticated maritime technology beside the period of early settlement and continuing voyaging. These are not stories preserved in one convenient captain's log. They are the stubborn remains of movement, a stone found far from the place where its rock was born, a pot made with unfamiliar sand, a canoe section resting where ocean travel had already reshaped human life. Put together, they make the old idea of helpless drifting feel much too small. Population evidence adds another quiet trace. Across parts of Polynesia, genetic patterns are consistent with small founding groups moving onward through a sequence of islands. In some regions, contact continued after settlement rather than ending the day a canoe first landed. That matters because finding an island once is remarkable. Maintaining exchange or returning across an ocean turns a remarkable event into a working network. The Pacific settlement story therefore contains both discovery and memory. A route that succeeds can be taught, repeated, adjusted, and joined to other routes until distant islands belong to a connected human world. Imagine packing your own household for a journey after which the road itself will vanish. You would notice how quickly courage becomes logistics. The washer must be reachable without untying half the deck. Heavy objects must sit where they help, rather than fight the canoe. A plant that matters at the destination must be protected from salt. A blade needed for repair cannot be buried beneath sleeping mats. Each item is a promise to the people aboard and to the people who may live where the canoe lands. The reason to sail could vary across generations and places: exploration, settlement, visiting kin, exchange, return, or the search for opportunity under changing conditions. The important point for this voyage is visible in the preparation. People who load useful living things, tools, and water have turned the horizon into a problem they intend to solve. The vessel itself is part of that answer. Two hulls joined by strong crossbeams create a broad platform with room for crew and cargo. Sail power turns steady wind into distance. Lashings allow the structure to work with the sea rather than pretending to be a single rigid block. Steering remains physical. The paddle presses back. The sail is trim. Weight is moved. The canoe speaks through tension, spray, speed, and angle. It is tempting to imagine your role as that of a lonely genius, sitting in silence while everyone else waits. The loaded deck tells a better story. Your knowledge matters because a community has decided that something worth carrying lies beyond sight. The crew must preserve the vessel. The steerer must hold your instruction. Lookouts must notice changes and report them to you. People who sleep must trust those who remain awake. You carry the route, but many hands carry the voyage. In the fading light, the cargo settles into the rhythm of the hulls. A container creaks against its lashing, then becomes quiet. The departure island is now beyond ordinary vision. Whatever reasons sent this canoe outward, turning back would require the same kind of knowledge as going on. The sea has no painted center line. The sky offers thousands of lights and no labels. The canoe carries a small world in its hull. Its compass must be carried somewhere else. Stand in the middle of the canoe and slowly turn. The horizon makes a complete circle around you. By daylight it can look almost empty, but emptiness is often just a place whose categories you have not learned yet. Modern Hawaiian wayfinders use a star compass developed by Nainoa Thompson as the teaching framework. It is not a wooden disc or a set of marks painted on the deck. It is a mental circle divided into named houses around the horizon. 32 houses organize the places where celestial bodies rise and set. The same framework can help arrange observations of waves and the flight of birds. It is a way to hold relationships in memory until an apparently featureless circle becomes full of addresses. This particular 32-house compass belongs to the modern Hawaiian revival and teaching tradition. Across Polynesia, navigators learned through their own languages, local skies, routes, and systems. For your representative voyage, the mental circle gives you a clean doorway into the underlying idea. You learn where useful stars touch the horizon and turn those repeated places into bearings. Think of a roundabout near home. On your first visit, it is a mildly hostile circle of traffic. After enough journeys, its exits stop being anonymous. One leads toward work, another toward the grocery store, another toward the road out of town. The concrete is not changed. Your relationship to it has. As the navigator, you perform a far more demanding version of that familiar change, giving the horizon remembered doors. Stars are most useful for steering when they are low. Near the horizon, their rising or setting place provides a clear directional reference. Higher in the sky, a star can still be recognized and can help with other judgments, but it becomes less convenient as a point toward which to aim the canoe. You need to know not only which light you are seeing, but where that light belongs when it enters or leaves the ocean. You give the steerer a house rather than an abstract lecture. Hold the canoe so the chosen low star remains over a particular part of the bow. Watch the relationship, not the star alone. The hull will rise and fall. Spray will catch starlight. The sail may pull harder as a gust arrives. The steerer corrects gently, using your horizon house to keep the average direction steady through all the small motion. This is an important distinction. If you chase every wobble, you make the canoe wander. A swell lifts the bow and appears to move the star. The canoe rolls and the star seems to slide. The useful course lives in the repeated relationship that returns after each movement. Anyone who is trying to keep a car centered while staring too closely at the pavement knows the problem. Good steering looks farther ahead. The sun belongs to this directional world as well. So do the moon and planets when their identities and behavior are understood. By day, the sun's movement in the direction of familiar swells can support the course. At night, the number of possible star bearings grows, but so does the work of memory. A bright point is useful only when it has a name, a place, and a role in the route. Now the selected star is climbing. It rose from the useful house, but the turning earth carries it upward and across the sky. If the steerer tries to keep pointing directly at it, the canoe will slowly turn away from the intended course. The light has not betrayed anyone. It has simply moved beyond the part of its path used for this job. You look farther along the horizon. Another star from your learned sequence is rising where the course needs it. Soon a third will follow. The sky is preparing a handoff, and every person on the canoe will depend on you remembering the order. The first steering star rises too high, and a second light takes its place near the horizon. The instruction passed to the steerer remains almost unchanged. The object carrying that instruction has changed completely. This is the star relay. A navigator does not fasten the canoe to one brilliant point and follow it until morning. The sky is turning, and each useful star has a period when its relationship to the horizon is clearest. A rising star begins near a known house, climbs, and eventually gives way to another. A setting star descends toward its own known place. Through the night, the course can pass from one celestial marker to the next, like a message carried by a line of quiet runners. The relay solves one of the questions that brought you aboard. Which star keeps you on course while the whole sky turns? Not one star. A learned succession keeps the bearing, with each star useful at the right moment. The skill lies less in worshipping the brightest object than in knowing who comes next. That has an ordinary echo. On a long drive at night, you rarely navigate by staring at one landmark for an hour. A bridge leads to an exit, the exit leads to a road, and the road leads to the lights of a town. Each sign is temporary. The route is what survives their disappearance. Your memory holds star lines and sequences that help organize the celestial sphere. Some relationships point north and south. Pairs of stars can cross the meridian together, making an imagined line toward a cardinal direction. Other known stars rise or set in useful houses. The names you learned join light, story, direction, season, and teaching. The night sky becomes less like a scattering of glitter and more like a well-known settlement seen from above. Cloud makes your sequence more demanding even before the sky closes completely. A patch may cover the star you expected while leaving a small opening elsewhere. Your training lets you recognize an isolated star or familiar group and use that fragment to imagine the larger arrangement around it. You've probably done a humble version with a familiar room in darkness. One rectangle of window and the faint edge of a door are enough for the rest of the room to return in your mind. The hidden part of the sky continues moving whether you see it or not. That sounds obvious until you try to use it. You must know which star should be approaching the horizon after an hour of cloud and which useful light has already passed its house. The sequence supplies celestial continuity. When a gap opens, you are not surprised by a random star. It appears inside the order you have kept turning in memory. The voyage may also be timed so useful stars appear during the season of travel. The night sky changes through the year. A route learned with particular celestial companions is easier when those companions rise at favorable hours. This connects navigation to preparation on shore. Choosing when to depart is already part of navigating, just as selecting a route with expected winds is part of the course strategy before the sail is raised. Around midnight, the sea is almost black. The stars do not illuminate the deck in the way a lamp would. They outline surfaces instead. A shoulder becomes a small shadow. A wet rope gives back a thread of light. The steerer looks beyond all of it, toward the low point you have named. One course, several stars. One voyage, many watches. The pattern begins to repeat. The repetition is calming, but it is not empty. Each handoff confirms that the canoe's bow still belongs in the same directional house. If the wind shifts, the sail is adjusted. If the sea turns the canoe during a swell, the steerer waits for the hull to settle and brings it back. The average line matters more than a momentary swing. Near dawn, pure bright stars remain visible against the growing light. The sun will soon take over part of the directional work. The relay has carried the canoe through a night, yet direction alone leaves a dangerous gap. A perfectly held southwest course may still pass east or west of its imagined line because wind and current move the whole canoe sideways. And knowing the bow's direction tells you little about whether you have moved too far north or south. You now study how the sky itself has changed with latitude. A familiar star sits at a slightly different height. A southern pattern is shifted. The question is no longer simply which way is the bow pointing. It is, where has this night placed us? Before sunrise, the horizon becomes a clean, dark line. It is a good time to compare the sky with memory. In the northern part of the ocean, Polaris offers a special relationship. Its height above the northern horizon changes with latitude. Sail south, and it sits lower, sail north and it rises higher. Near enough to the equator, it becomes difficult to use while other star relationships grow more important. A navigator who has learned the sky from known islands can compare the present height with a remembered one. The measurement can be embodied. An outstretched hand, fingers, or a known span can help compare the distance between a star and the horizon. The point is not to announce a modern coordinate with impressive decimals. The point is to notice that a familiar light now sits where it would sit from a different band of ocean. Training gives these comparisons depth. A star learned as passing overhead near one island becomes a remembered ceiling for that latitude. A north-south pair is practiced until the line between them can be extended toward the horizon. The apprentice does not memorize a diagram once and declare the skill complete. The sky is watched from known places, then watched again at sea, until hand, horizon, star, and island settle into one usable relationship. Knowledge becomes reliable because the body has met the pattern many times. South of the equator, the Southern Cross and nearby stars can help shape a southward relationship. Pairs of stars that cross the meridian together can point toward north or south. Stars passing overhead may be associated with the latitude of particular islands or routes. The entire sky offers lines and heights that a trained observer can compare without unfolding a chart. This is latitude without a spoken number. You know the look of the sky the way you know the approach to a familiar house. Long before you can read the number on the door, the slope of the street, a certain tree, and the spacing of nearby roofs have already told you where you are. Your celestial recognition is more exacting, but the mental act is related. Place lives in a pattern. The canoe continues to move as you compare. That is part of the difficulty. Nothing waits politely for the observation. The horizon rises on a swell. A low cloud hides the line. The star brightens as your eyes adjust and fades as dawn arrives. Several observations are more useful than one hurried glance. A known relationship repeated across time becomes dependable. Latitude is one half of your larger positional problem. Imagine that the destination lies somewhere to the south and east. Star height may tell you whether the canoe has reached the right northern or southern band. It does not place a neat dot along that band. There is no equally convenient celestial sign saying you are now exactly this far east of home. That missing east-west certainty is where memory takes on its heaviest job. You have the starting island and the reference course prepared before departure. Since then, there have been hours of steering, periods of stronger wind, periods of slower progress, and perhaps a deliberate change of heading. The canoe has slipped sideways under the pressure of wind. Current has moved water beneath it. You must add every piece to a position that exists nowhere outside your trained mind. You might picture an invisible cord trailing from the canoe all the way back to the departure channel. It bends whenever the course changes. It bows when the wind pushes sideways. It lengthens with estimated speed and time. The stars can tell you how the canoe is oriented and help constrain latitude, but the cord remembers how you arrived here. Morning removes the stars one by one. The sea takes on color. Your crew prepares food, checks lashings, and eases stiff hands. You do not begin a fresh route because daylight has arrived. The route in your memory already contains the night. The question waiting in the brightening sky is simple to ask and difficult to live. How do you know where you are when nothing around you gives the whole position at once? By daylight, the canoe's wake looks like a line, but it closes almost as soon as it is made. White bubbles soften. The surface folds over them. Within minutes, the ocean has erased the only literal track the canoe leaves. You keep another track. Modern wayfinding descriptions call this dead reckoning. Begin from a known point, estimate the direction and distance traveled, account for changes, and continually plot the canoe's position against an imagined reference course. The phrase sounds severe, though the practice is wonderfully alive. It demands attention to the sail, hull, wind, current, time, and reports of other people. You estimate speed from how the canoe moves through water and from long experience with the vessel under different sail and sea conditions. You hold time through watches, celestial movement, daylight, meals, and the accumulated rhythm of the voyage. You remember course changes. If the wind pushes the canoe away from the reference line, you estimate how far to one side it has gone and plan how that difference will be managed later. Your estimate is not a one-time guess made at sunset. It can change as the canoe changes. A loaded vessel in light wind moves differently from the same vessel with a firm following breeze. The shape of the wake, the pressure in the sail, the sound and feel of water along the hulls, and comparisons learned on previous passages help turn motion into a useful range. Over several hours, you combine that range with elapsed time. The result needs to be good enough to guide your next decision. The bow's direction and the canoe's actual path are cousins, not twins. Point a car straight along a road in a strong crosswind and you feel the correction through the steering wheel. On water, leeway can slide a sailing canoe sideways. Current carries the surrounding sea. The canoe may look properly aimed while its traveled path angles elsewhere. This is why a star bearing by itself is only part of the answer. Your mental plot is updated rather than rediscovered. You cannot look at a random star and have it announce the canoe's complete position. You know where you are in relation to where you began, what course you intended, and what has happened since. The route is a continuous story in which forgetting a chapter changes the ending for everyone aboard. Suppose the canoe sailed steadily for one part of the morning, slowed as wind softened, then changed course to keep the sail drawing. A crew member reports the change. Another notices that the swell now meets the hull from a different angle. You compare both observations with the reference course. No single detail is grand. Their combination determines whether the invisible chord in your mind should bend east, west, north, or south. This is where your crew becomes part of the navigational instrument. The person at the paddle knows how much correction has been required. The sail crew feels changes in pressure. Lookouts notice weather, birds, weed, and cloud. They give those pieces to you, and you gather them into one model. A missed report is a missing movement in the route you are responsible for preserving. The method also shapes rest. A navigator responsible for the whole picture may take short periods of sleep while preserving awareness of the canoe's behavior and receiving changes from trusted crew. Modern accounts of Hokulea make the fatigue and concentration tangible. The romantic image of endless stargazing gives way to a more human one, listening, checking, remembering, correcting, and occasionally trying to rest while the deck continues its patient motion. Planning before departure makes this burden manageable. The wayfinder chooses a reference course suited to the vessel and expected winds, considers current and weather, and thinks about the return journey. The most useful route may approach the destination from the upwind side, allowing the canoe to sail downwind toward land rather than fighting to windward at the end. The landfall is being prepared even while the island is days away. By afternoon, your route contains the backside, the first star house, the relay through the night, the morning latitude comparison, and the day's estimate of motion. Each new observation changes your picture slightly without replacing it. Then a dark bank gathers ahead. The sun becomes a pale patch. The horizon loses its hard edge, and the first drops of rain stipple the deck. Soon the sky that calibrated the route is hidden. The canoe keeps moving. The invisible cord keeps lengthening. And for the first time, you must find out whether the route can survive without the lights that began it. Cloud closes over the canoe without ceremony. One moment there are several faint openings above. The next, there is only a dark roof, the sound of water along the hulls, and the steady pressure of wind in the sail. The loss feels complete because sight has been doing so much obvious work. Yet your last clear observation has not evaporated. The canoe had a known bearing when the star disappeared. The sail had a certain pull. The long swell met the hull at a certain angle. Your steerer was holding a particular relationship between bow, wind, and water. Cloud removes your next visual check. It does not erase the state that existed a moment before. This is the second major question of the voyage. What happens when every star you know is hidden? The immediate task is continuity. Hold the last calibrated course through the signals that remain, then use any brief opening in the cloud to check and adjust. The wind can help, though wind changes. The sail can help, though its pressure responds to gusts and trim. The motion of the canoe can help, though local chop makes noise. Each clue has limits, and that is precisely why you keep them together. If wind feel, sail pressure, hull motion, and your remembered bearing agree, the course has continuity. If one changes while the others remain stable, that difference itself is information for you to interpret. Imagine walking through your own tub bedroom after a power cut. The furniture remains where it was when the light went out. For a short distance, your last clear picture carries you. You slow down. You use the floor beneath your feet, the edge of a bed, the faint rectangle of a window. Your ocean environment is moving, and your navigational skill is vastly greater. But the logic is familiar. The last good picture remains useful while touch and memory protect it. Rain darkens the deck. Your crew lowers their voices because the sound of wind and water now matters more. The steerer feels the paddle load and release. You ask whether the bow has been falling away from the swell. The sail crew reports a shift in pressure. These are not guesses tossed into darkness. They are observations entering the same mental route you began with the backsight. A small clearing opens to the east. One star appears, not the one you expected to use, but a recognized light in a known part of the sky. You use the fragment to restore the wider arrangement. Perhaps the correction is minor. Perhaps the canoe has been sliding and you give the steerer a new house. The opening closes, but it has refreshed your course. Traditional and revived wayfinding knowledge treats navigation as observation of an environment, not dependence on one instrument. Stars, sun, ocean swells, weather, and living creatures can each offer clues. Your achievement is deciding how they fit together at this point in this voyage. Cloud can last longer than a comfortable interruption. Then your route becomes less sharp. You reduce confidence in the estimate, pay closer attention to the sea, and wait for the next reliable calibration. Uncertainty here is not a speech about failure. It changes your behavior. You listen harder. You preserve what is stable. You avoid pretending that a noisy signal is clear, because your crew will steer by whatever judgment you give them. The most stable signal now seems to come from below. Local wind waves slap and rattle across the surface, but beneath them a slow emotion keeps returning. One hull rises first, then the other. The canoe pitches, settles, and rises again in a rhythm that began far beyond the cloud above you. The stars have vanished. Their last bearing has moved into the body of the canoe. The ocean is never still, but it is not merely restless. Its movements have structure. Wind transfers energy into water and creates waves. Those waves can travel away from the weather that made them, becoming long swells that persist across great distances. Near the canoe, local chop may cross the longer pattern. Rain roughens the surface. A second swell may arrive from another direction. To an untrained passenger, all of this is simply the sea being the sea. To a trained navigator, the patterns have different signatures. Close your eyes for a moment in the imagined canoe. The star houses disappear, but the hull remains under your feet. A swell approaching from one side lifts the windward hull first. A swell from ahead produces a different pitch. An oblique swell creates a sequence through the structure, one rise, a twist across the platform, then release. Repetition allows the body to separate that long rhythm from the smaller taps on top of it. It is a little like sitting on a train with a cup on the table. The cup trembles with tiny vibrations. The window gives an occasional rattle. Beneath both is the slower roll of the carriage through a curve. After a while, You know which movement belongs to the track and which belongs to the cup. As the Polynesian navigator on this canoe, you have learned an oceanic version with far more patterns and far higher stakes. Modern observers sailing with traditional navigators have described the remarkable human capacity to learn and feel swells. In Micronesian traditions, knowledge of how swell patterns bend, reflect, or interact around islands was organized and taught in sophisticated ways. Marshallese stick charts, made with palm ribs and shells or coral pieces, represented swell relationships in islands. They were teaching objects rather than steering wheels taken to sea. The route still had to be felt and remembered aboard the canoe. Our voyage is Polynesian, but the modern revival includes a crucial Micronesian teacher. Malpailuk came from Satawal in the Caroline Islands, in what is now the Federated States of Micronesia. He had learned non-instrument navigation through a living chain of master navigators, reading waves, stars, weather, and marine life. When Hawaiian voyagers sought to revive deep ocean practice, Mao shared knowledge that helped bridge an interrupted tradition. Mao's presence matters for more than a heroic biography. It makes the swell chapter practical. A navigator can feel when the canoe is turned away from the expected relationship, sometimes while resting. The hull carries the information through the body. If the steerer changes course, the angle and sequence of the rise changes. A person trained over years may notice what a newcomer experiences only as another anonymous roll. The long swell becomes a rail beneath the canoe. Not a hard rail, and not one that removes judgment. Wind can change. Swells can cross. Islands and shallow water can alter wave direction and energy. Yet a persistent pattern offers continuity when cloud closes the sky. It is an independent reference, valuable because it was calibrated while the celestial direction was clear. You ask an apprentice to sit quietly beside you and sort the motions. First notice the largest slow rise. Then notice the quicker chop running over it. Turn your attention toward the angle, not the force. Which hull lifts first? How long before the second lift? Does the sequence remain after the gust has passed? Learning may begin with the canoe held on a known course under a clear sky. The stars provide direction, and the apprentice notices how the dominant swell feels from that direction. Then the canoe changes angle. The bodily pattern changes with it. Repeated comparisons build a library. Swell from ahead, swell on the quarter, two swells crossing, local wind waves obscuring a longer train. When cloud arrives later, the body is not inventing a direction. It is matching present motion to relationships calibrated while the sky was available. That training also explains why a swell is most powerful as part of a set. A long pattern may remain steady while a squall changes local wind. A second swell may reveal another weather system. You compare them, selecting the relationship that fits your route and recent conditions rather than treating the largest movement as automatically correct. There is no need to make the sea mystical. The wonder is already large enough. Your nervous system, trained by culture and practice, can classify complicated motion while you stand on a moving vessel in darkness. You are not listening for a supernatural whisper. You are recognizing patterns as concrete as a carpenter recognizing when a tool has begun to cut differently. By the time a few stars return, the swell has carried your last bearing through the covered hours. You check the sky, compare it with the felt line, and adjust the mental route. The answer to cloud is now fuller. The stars give you a calibration. The swell preserves its direction. Wind, sail, time, and hull motion keep that direction connected to your moving canoe. One problem remains. A navigator can watch the sky and feel the sea, but cannot hold the steering paddle, trim the sail, protect the cargo, scan every horizon, and remain awake forever. The route must pass through other people without breaking. Near dawn, the watch changes. The outgoing steerer does not simply stand up and leave the paddle. The canoe has a recent history, and that history must be handed over. The steerer reports how the vessel has been behaving, the pressure needed to hold the bow, the angle of the dominant swell, changes in wind, and any moments when the canoe fell away from the instructed house. The incoming steerer repeats your course. Hands find the steering paddle. The sail crew confirms the trim. You listen for anything that requires the invisible route to bend. This is the voyage in miniature. One person gives another a manageable instruction, while you preserve why that instruction matters and where it is meant to lead. The distinction makes the crew effective. A steerer need not carry the entire route from departure, every star sequence, the estimate of latitude, the expected current, and the final island search all at once. The steerer needs the present bearing and the skill to hold it, then must report meaningful changes. The lookout needs to scan for weather, birds, floating material, cloud behavior, and the first suggestion of land. The sail crew needs to keep the canoe moving safely and notice changes in performance. Distributed tasks feed one thought. Anyone who has taken over a careful job at the end of another person's long shift knows the value of a good handoff. The useful sentence is not, "Everything is probably fine." It is, "Here is what the system was doing, here is what changed, and here is what needs watching next." On the canoe, a vague handoff becomes drift. A clear one becomes distance in the intended direction. Fatigue gives this teamwork emotional weight, without turning the deck into melodrama. Salt dries on skin. Hands become sore. Sleep comes in pieces. A person waking for a watch must bring attention back to the present rhythm. Meals and small routines divide the days. Lashings are checked because the sea continues working at them. Water is managed because every cup was carried from somewhere else. Competence appears as repetition performed well. Your rest depends on trust with edges. Before closing your eyes, you hold the current course, the swell relationship, and the changes that require waking you. The crew need not wake you for every slap of water, yet a genuine shift in wind, heading, sail, or sea must travel quickly. Ordinary noise is absorbed by the watch. Meaningful change is handed to you. When you wake, the report reconnects your sleep to the route, allowing you to reconstruct the missing interval instead of leaving a blank space. The whole arrangement resembles a relay team carrying not only your direction, but the conditions under which it remains valid. Modern hukule of voyages made these pressures visible. The reconstructed Hawaiian voyaging canoe sailed tens of thousands of nautical miles across Polynesian waters over years of voyages. Nainoa Thompson trained with Maupiai Lug and planetarium lecturer Will Kaiselka, then in 1980 navigated Akula from Hawaii to Tahiti without modern navigational instruments. These voyages did not turn one modern canoe into a time machine. They showed in moving water and real weather that an integrated system of celestial and environmental navigation could carry a crew across the routes under discussion. The 1976 voyage had already carried H. Huli from Hawaii to Tahiti with Mau as navigator, a journey of thousands of miles that became a landmark in the revival. The later 1980 voyage placed Nainoa in the navigator's role after years of preparation. The knowledge had passed between islands, languages, generations, and teachers. The very act of teaching becomes another kind of navigation, preserving a line when history has obscured some of the old marks. Back aboard your representative Polynesian canoe, the morning watch settles. You now believe the vessel is approaching the broad region of the destination. The island is still invisible. A low island can remain below the horizon until the canoe is close. Even a high island occupies a tiny part of a very large circle. Your open ocean course has brought everyone near the problem. It is not solved the last few miles. The work changes. The crew no longer looks only for a strip of land. They begin looking for everything an island does to the world around it. You have kept one thought alive through many hands. Now you must grow a small island into a target large enough to find before the canoe passes it. An island seen from far away is a poor target. A low atoll can hide below the horizon. A high island may be visible from farther off, but it still occupies a narrow piece of a circle stretching in every direction. If you aimed only for the beach itself, a modest error could carry your canoe and everyone aboard through empty water beside it. Your solution begins before the shore appears. You aim for a screen. Pacific islands often occur in groups. Your destination may sit among neighboring islands that stretch the useful target north and south or east and west. Instead of trying to hit one speck, you design the course to reach the broader line of an archipelago. Once you find that screen, you can work along it toward the intended island. Modern wayfinding descriptions also call the destination region the box. Your reference course brings the canoe into the box. Land finding begins inside it. This is a change of task. During the passage, you asked whether the canoe was holding the route. Inside the box, you ask which signs reveal where land lies within reach. The approach may be planned from the upwind side. A sailing canoe generally finds it easier to move downwind toward a destination than to discover it has passed downwind and must fight back. So the broad course strategy and the final search are connected. A choice made before departure creates a gentler correction days later. Picture a chain of islands spread across your course like a wide gate. The intended island may be one post in that gate, but neighboring islands, reefs, and their environmental signatures widen the opening. Reaching the gate converts your enormous two-dimensional ocean problem into a narrower question: which way along the screen leads home? You can use latitude knowledge to aim for the correct band, then search along it. This is a much more forgiving plan than trying to strike one invisible dot from the departure island in a single perfect line. You use this kind of enlargement in ordinary life. A friend's house may be hard to see from the main road, but the neighborhood is large. First, you find the street, then a row of trees, then the neighboring roof. And only at the end do you need the number on the door. The island has a neighborhood too. It affects clouds, birds, swells, currents, reef water, and floating life. Its beach is only the final address. The crew expands its attention. Lookouts scan high and low. A stationary cloud pile deserves notice. A change in the regular swell may matter. Reflected or refracted waves can carry information from land beyond sight. Floating leaves or coastal debris are considered in context. Birds become moving lines that may connect feeding grounds at sea with nesting places on land. Then the first bird appears. It is only a dark shape crossing the morning brightness, but after days of sea, wings can feel like a message written personally for the canoe. Someone points. Heads turn. Hope arrives faster than judgment. You watch what kind of bird it is and how it behaves. Some seabirds live comfortably across wide ocean distances. A pelagic bird may pass the canoe while land remains far away, offering excitement but little direction. Other birds regularly return to land to roost or feed young. Their flight at particular times of day can be far more useful. A bird heading seaward in the morning may have left an island behind it. One returning in late afternoon may point toward land ahead. The foosbird, then, is not a yes or no sign. It is a question with wings. Where did it come from? Where is it going? Is it flying with purpose or wandering over open water? Is the time of day consistent with leaving a nest or returning to one? Wings appear, but the island remains unseen. Your crew has entered the right kind of world. As navigator, you still need the signs to agree before you risk turning everyone toward an attractive mistake. The search can also become geometric. If the expected island fails to appear, the canoe can make an orderly sweep rather than wandering. A zigzag search converts uncertainty into covered space. Each leg is remembered. Each change is added to the mental plot. The same discipline that crossed the ocean now prevents the final search from becoming confused. An orderly search also protects your way back to the best estimate. Suppose you turn the canoe north for a measured period, find no new sign, and return across the likely line before searching south. You know which water has been examined and which remains open. If a cloud dissolves or a bird proves unhelpful, you have lost a clue rather than the entire plan. The island may still refuse to appear, yet every deliberate lag reduces the part of the screen you have left untested. The bird moves away and becomes a dot. No beach rises beneath it, yet you have not lost the sign. Its direction has entered your route, waiting to be compared with the next bird, the next cloud, and the next change in the sea. The island is already larger than it looked. It now includes a screen, a box, an upwind approach, a bird corridor, and a search pattern. Still, only convergence will make the invisible land believable. The next bird carries something pale in its beak. That detail changes the meaning of its flight. A bird with a fish may be returning to feed a chick. Its direction is no longer merely the direction chosen by a creature over open ocean. It may be a line toward a nesting place on land. Time of day, species, behavior, and the carried fish join into one more specific clue. In accounts from the modern voyaging revival, Mapielu could read such details, while less experienced eyes saw only a bird. The gift was not sharper eyesight alone. It was a larger library of relationships. A fish in the beak connected the bird to a nest. A nest connected it to land. The bird's heading turned that invisible land into a direction worth testing. This pays the bird loop without asking the bird to perform magic. The first wings were false certainty. The later behavior provides conditional direction. Experience lies in knowing the difference. Above that part of the horizon, a cloud has also begun to behave differently. Air moving over an island can rise, cool, and build cloud. A persistent formation may remain where neighboring clouds drift away. Sunlight can reflect from a lagoon onto the underside of a cloud, changing its color. A cloud by itself is easy to wish into land. A cloud aligned with the purposeful bird deserves more attention. Below, the swell changes. Ocean waves entering shallower water can change direction and energy. Swells can bend around land through refraction. Islands can create sheltered regions, reflected patterns, or crossings that differ from the open ocean rhythm. The hull that spent days repeating one long lift now meets a variation. One pattern weakens. Another arises at an angle that fits the direction suggested by bird and cloud. You can feel the scene becoming denser. Far from land, each observation seemed to open into more ocean. Here, observations begin pointing toward one another. The bird flies beneath the cloud. The Latitude swell approaches from the same quarter. A piece of vegetation appears in water where open ocean material had been scarce. The color of the sea may change near reef or shore. The signs are still gentle, but they now form a neighborhood. Even the absence of the old swell can carry meaning. Land can block part of a wave field and leave a quieter shadow. Waves bending around an island may arrive from angles that make little sense in empty deep water, but become coherent once you imagine a hidden obstruction. Near reefs and shallows, wave energy and direction change again. You do not need to solve a page of fluid equations. Your practical question is whether the sea has stopped behaving like uninterrupted open ocean in the same direction suggested by the other clues. This is how an island becomes detectable before it becomes visible. Its effective size includes everything it changes. You adjust the course. The steerer repeats your new house. Lookouts remain on both sides because expectation can narrow vision too much. Your crew is excited, but you make the work more careful rather than louder. Lashings are checked. The sail is managed for the search. You record the turn in your mental route so that, if the clue fails, you can return the canoe to an orderly pattern. For a while, the horizon remains stubbornly clean. Then Miles sees something the younger eyes have missed. In a documented modern landfall story, his experience recognized the clue before others could resolve the island itself. He knew where and how to look, below the cloud, along the lines suggested by the bird, where the shape of land would first differ from a swell. On your representative canoe, you search the same narrow band. A ridge at great distance can look less like a mountain than a slightly darker piece of sky. You stare until your eyes begin creating shapes of their own. A swell rises and briefly impersonates land. It falls away. Another dark mark holds its place. The canoe rises. The mark remains. The canoe falls. The mark remains. There is the smallest interruption in the horizon. The pleasure of this moment comes from everything that had to precede it. The island is not a lucky silhouette discovered by the person who happened to look up. It is the final member of a chain. Departure marks, star houses, celestial relay, latitude, remembered distance, drift, cloud continuity, swell, handoffs, target screen, bird behavior, cloud, and altered water. Visible land is the last sign, not the first. The dark line slowly gathers weight. What looked like a mark becomes a ridge. The cloud above it now seems attached to a place. The bird's direction makes sense. The swell's change makes sense. Several uncertain clues have turned into one coherent landscape. The sea has not surrendered an island to a magical gaze. The crew has earned the ability to recognize what was already there. Morning light gives the distant ridge a second edge. What began as a dark interruption now has slope and depth. The canoe still has water to cross, but the oldest question on deck has changed. You are no longer asking whether land exists ahead. You are deciding how to approach it. The first opening question can now be answered plainly. Which star kept the canoe on course while the sky turned? A succession did. Each useful star gave a bearing near its rising or setting house, then handed that course to another light, to the sun, or to a remembered direction. The hero was not one star. It was the continuity between them. What happened when cloud erased the sky? Your last celestial calibration remained inside the voyage. Wind, sail pressure, the canoe's motion, persistent swells, elapsed time, and brief openings preserved and corrected it. Cloud reduced your certainty, but it did not force you to begin again from nothing. How did you find an island before sailing past it? You stopped treating the beach as the whole target. You aimed for an island screen in an upwind region, ordered the search, and watched the world land had altered. Birds, clouds, wave patterns, reefs, drifting material, and neighboring islands enlarged your target until several signs converged. The modern voyages of Hukulea gave these relationships of vessel, crew, weather, and destination. In 1976, Mau Piailug navigated the canoe from Hawaii to Tahiti. In 1980, after training with Mau and Will Kaiselka, Nainoa Thompson navigated Okulekere without modern navigational instruments. Those crossings demonstrated the practical strength of an integrated system while helping renew Hawaiian confidence, teaching, and voyaging culture. The much older story is visible in a different kind of record. Remote islands were settled. Founding populations crossed open water. Stone and pottery traveled beyond their source islands. Plants and animals moved with people. Canoe technology developed across island environments and voyaging networks. No single artifact contains a complete route, and the Way to Night story has followed one. Together, the traces established the scale of deliberate human mobility across the Pacific. Now return to your place on the deck. You never possessed the whole answer in one object. A compass could have supplied direction, but not the current. A clock could have supplied elapsed time, but not the swell. A map could have shown the destination, but not the bird returning with food, the cloud holding above land, or the sideways push you felt during the night. Your Polynesian navigational knowledge worked because every relationship remained connected. That is the deepest payoff. Successful wayfinding is continuous model maintenance. You keep asking how the newest observation changes the remembered relationship between departure, canoe, course, and destination. A star does not announce your position. A swell does not announce your distance. A bird does not announce your island. Their meaning appears inside the living history you have carried since the departure shore vanished. This also changes the familiar picture of the lone navigator. One mind carries the complete route, but the route is fed by a community. A steerer holds the house. A sail handler reports pressure. A lookout notices a bird. An apprentice feels the swell. A teacher passes knowledge across a break in tradition. The canoe reaches land because many precise acts remain connected. The Pacific around you now feels different from the ocean at the beginning. Then it seemed like empty distance after the last ridge disappeared. Now it is crowded with structure. The horizon has houses. The sky has sequences. Latitude has a familiar shape. Swells carry direction. Wind and current leave consequences in the route. Birds connect feeding water with nesting land. Clouds gather above islands. Waves bend, reflect, and soften around them. The map was never a sheet waiting to be unrolled. It was a changing relationship among canoe, sky, sea, weather, living creatures, memory, and land. The island ahead grows slowly because real landfall has the good manners to take its time. A ridge becomes several ridges. A pale strip appears beneath the darker slopes. The smell and sound of water alter nearer the reef. The great open ocean swell becomes complicated by shallower ground in the shelter of land. No triumphant horn is needed. The crew still has work. Sail must be managed. Water near the island must be read. A safe approach matters more than a dramatic finish. Yet the invisible core that began at the departure channel has reached another shore. Near land, the crew's attention narrows from ocean scale to the next safe stretch of water. The same habits continue: observe, compare, hand off, and correct. Arrival is not the abandonment of wayfinding. It is the final change of scale. The knowledge can now travel onward. Ninawa Thompson taught new generations after learning from Mao. Kole, a continued to voyage. What had once been dismissed by some outsiders as impossible or accidental became visible again as disciplined skill, cultural memory, and practiced observation. You may let the names and details drift now. The canoe has found the island. The star that carried the last night is fading above it. A bird turns toward the trees. The hulls rise together on a smaller, gentler line of water. You did not cross an empty ocean without a map. For the entire voyage, the map was alive around you. And as your last steering instruction becomes unnecessary, you can let the island hold its place on the horizon, let the deck keep its slow rhythm beneath you, and rest.